This question comes from curious minds everywhere. What if our planet were not a perfect sphere, but a giant cube floating in space? Imagine stepping outside one morning and seeing the horizon suddenly bend in straight lines instead of a smooth curve. At first glance, you might not notice much. After all, your feet would still be firmly planted on solid ground. Your coffee cup would still sit on the table. But as the minutes ticked by, you'd feel the unusual geometry of your world tugging at every instinct you've ever had about up and down, left and right. On a spherical Earth, gravity pulls you straight toward the center, giving you a consistent sense of down no matter where you stand. But on a cube, gravity would still aim for the center of mass, which lies at the heart of the cube, and so at the exact center of each face, you'd feel completely normal, as if standing on flat ground. Wander toward an edge, though, and suddenly gravity would start to pull you diagonally inward toward the cube's center, so that your down would slant sideways. You'd find yourself perched precariously, feeling as though you were walking up a hill even when you thought you were moving on level ground. Attempt to stand at a corner where three faces meet, and gravity would be pulling you along a three-way diagonal, making it all but impossible to keep your balance without gripping a railing or clinging to a fellow pedestrian. These strange slopes would reshape everything from architecture to agriculture. Skyscrapers might lean at odd angles, designed to compensate for the slanted pull, and rivers would no longer flow in gentle curved basins, but carve V-shaped channels toward the face centers. At the very edges of each cube face, water would cascade in misty sheets, spilling over the invisible boundary between faces in great waterfalls that disappear into the cavernous valleys around the cube's midribs. Rain would collect unnaturally at the central plazas of each face, forming deep square lakes that mirror the sky. Day and night would become a dramatic sequence of light shows. As the cube rotates, each face would turn toward the sun in distinct stages, bathing one entire square in daylight while 5 others linger in twilight or night. You'd witness a sharp transition from dawn to full sun within moments, as if someone flipped a giant light switch instead of watching a gradual sunrise. Shadows would form stark, right-angled profiles. A building shadow wouldn't stretch and curve, but drop crisp rectangles across the ground. Evening would close in with sudden darkness, followed by a period where the sun's light grazes the edges of the cube, creating brilliant crests of fire that outline the planet's silhouette. Weather patterns, too, would take on a cubist character. On a globe, winds circle around high and low pressure systems along curved isobars. On a cube, those pressure systems would align with the flat faces and sharp edges, driving peculiar wind tunnels along the cube's seams. Hurricanes might stall at the edges, unable to cross the sudden change in topography, while in the center of each face, you'd find sprawling deserts or rainforests, depending on how the sun's rays concentrate. The poles, reduced from 2 cap-like regions on a sphere, to the 8 corners of a cube would be impossibly cold points where chilly air sinks and slides down the faces, forming massive ice sheets that end abruptly at the ridges. Travel would become an ordeal of constant adjustment. A plane flying in a straight line across a cube's face would suddenly have to bank sharply as it reached an edge, or else risk veering skyward into thin atmosphere. Seafarers charting courses across the square oceans would use right angles and straight-line bearings, a cartographer's dream of simplicity complicated only by the need to hop over the vast waterfalls that split the seas between faces. Even GPS systems, designed for spherical coordinates, would fail until rebuilt around cubic geometry, leaving early adopters stranded until the new mapping algorithms were debugged. Culturally, we might develop entirely new mythologies to explain the cube's faces and edges. Each face could be worshipped as a distinct realm, with its own climate gods and corner spirits. Festivals would celebrate the equinox-like moments when 2 faces receive equal sunlight, a fleeting harmony between daylight and shadow. Poets might write odes to the great rift between faces, while philosophers debate whether our world's sharp boundaries hint at a digital creator who preferred straight lines over curves. In the end, however distorted our perceptions, a cubical Earth would still be ours, a playground of physics and imagination where every horizon demanded a new way of seeing. And as you stood at the very center of one of its faces, feeling gravity's reassuring pull straight down, you'd realize that even a cubical world could still feel very much like home.